Bungay, champion, former champion, but now he is still a champion, by the way. And I have my colleague here, Ken, who is going also to help us analyze these athletic events that have happened over the weekend, and also the London Marathon, Berlin Marathon. Talk about what athletes have done for this country, and why are we not amused by Kipchoge breaking his record? It's just like normal, Ken. It's just like normal. It doesn't make sense to people here.
Yes. You know, I think we have just become so used to Eliud. We expect so much from him. If you look at the last record he broke, he shaved what? 78 seconds.
Yes.
This time round, he's shaved 30 seconds. We were expecting, maybe we were even disappointed because he should have shaved more than a minute. We were actually expecting a sub-20 record. I don't know how possible it's going to be, but that was my expectation.
Kenya's won too much from one man. Bungay, what do you think? What do you make of this?
Well, Jeff, I think just as Ken has said, you know, Eliud is one of the best athletes that we have, and therefore, when it comes to, you know, breaking world record, all of us, you know, we expected that he was going to do it, especially because, you know, Eliud is the only athlete that can say that this is what I'm going to do, and he does. Majority of us athletes, you know, sometimes you may have plan your race, but then when you reach there, we have seen even some others dropping, you know. If I put for example, you know, myself, at certain point, you know, there was a lot of expectations in Kenyans, and I disappointed them. So, but Eliud is one athlete that he plans his race as well. If you look at his program, you know, he has not competed so much, and that's why he had a lot of advantage. In fact, because watching that race, for certain reason, you know, I watched the race myself, because I don't watch athletics so much. And I think on the first half, I was sure that he was going to do the normal under 2 hours. And I think most Kenyans, they really expected that. And just the way he put it, and he said, you know what, I think we ran too fast on the first half, but otherwise had they done that. Because if you look at, for him to run 2:01:09, you know, had they planned well, you know, I believe he would have done 2:00.
This is a man who has done so much for this country. He started from 5,000 meters. He went to the Olympics. He has done so many races in 5,000 and said, "No, what? The track to hell. I'm going to the road races now." He went to the road races. He has won 15 of 17. He's a man who went to Vienna. They said it's not recognized, but he did 159, the Ineos Challenge. He was here, and he believed at some point he might do the same thing in Berlin, where he set his record in 2018. But he falls short of that. After falling short of that, I strongly believe that Kipchoge is a beacon of hope and inspiration to many athletes. But do we follow?
Yeah, I hear you, Jeff. But what you have to see is, and what I like about Eliud, Eliud has a plan. One, he doesn't run as many marathons as most of the other marathon runners do. He chooses the best. He knows he's aging. He knows that his body can only take so much. So he only chooses the ones he wants, the ones that he thinks he will add value to. He chooses Berlin. Why? Because Berlin is a flat course. I think the previous 2 or 3 records were all set up in Berlin, because it's flat, it's easy to do that. The other thing that Kipchoge has is mentality. He's a mentality monster. And that's why when he says, look, I'm planning to run in this marathon, and this is what I plan to do, he goes ahead and executes the plan. Maybe in Berlin he ran a little too fast in the first half. So that's why he was not able to do the sub 20. But if he ran as fast in the second, then, you know, he would have done a sub 2 hours. And I was just looking at the accolades that were coming in from him. I listened to Paula Radcliffe, and she said, you know, if there's anybody who can run less than 2 hours, it is this guy.
Kipchoge.
It is Eliud. There's no one else. It is Eliud. His mentality, his plan of running, he's the only one who can do that.
The Ugandans are coming as well. They're training on us. Eliud Kipchoge inspires one man, Amos Kipruto. Let's now talk about the London Marathon. This is a guy who has gone to so many. He did his debut in Berlin. He went to London. He is now there, and he's doing so well Do you think this guy is coming up to take over from Kipchoge? Amos Kipruto.
Jeff, let me tell you about Amos, and something that I like, and actually it is good that you have mentioned it, because I remember that immediately after he finished the race, he said that, I talked with Elliot. Fortunately, again, Elliot was there in London Marathon, and he said that I talked to him, and he told him that, just go, run, do your race. You see, as we all say, that there is this person who inspires you. Elliot inspires so many. And at the end of the day, every marathoner would like to have a conversation with Elliot, so that, just as Ken said, that, this is one athlete who started running way in 2000. I ran with Elliot in 2000 from 2004 in Athens Marathon, in Athens Olympics. And if you look at it, that is, I've retired 12 years ago, and this guy is still doing. So almost Kipruto, for example, if he's going to sit with Elliot, because I think something that I like with Elliot is that he wants to inspire the others. He wants to inspire even those who don't run. Because if you hear that, nothing is impossible, it means for these athletes, if they sit with them and tell them that it is much better for you to have a long-term plan, just as Ken said, have a long-term plan, look at yourself as a professional athlete who will be remembered for running 10, 15 years. Majority of us, we only run maybe 2 or 3 years and you are out. And again, when you're talking about Amos, he's still very young. If he remains focused, disciplined, just like every athlete, is advised to, then he has a lot of chance. Again, if you look at the time that he was able to run 2:04 in London, because remember that again, London is a little bit of a hard course. And for him to run 2:04, he has a chance, given the time, that he can be able also, hopefully, maybe he will break Elliot's world record. Even if he doesn't break, then at least he will have a stretch of winning races just the same way Elliot has won.
And even the course records, which have been there previously. Allow me now to rope in Bernard Otieno, who is in Ethiopia, Bahadir, on this northern side of Ethiopia. Bernard, what do you make of what Kipchoge has done so far?
It's one of the things that a lot of journalists and athletes are also talking about in Ethiopia, given the fact that one of their own won the female version of the marathon just the other day. But the fact that Kipchoge comes so close, first of all, shaving a good number of seconds off his own record, tells you of a man who has a plan in mind. The one thing I know about is that he's not in a rush. He even didn't want to say that he's going to break this record, although I think we discussed it on air and we said the hunch was that he's going for the record, and he did go for that record. And I think he's getting ever closer to the 2-hour barrier. He is not in a hurry to do it, but you could have seen from the ease with which he ran that race in Berlin that he's a man on a mission. He had to ask, if you notice, he asked even the pesetas at some point to just stay aside. Of course, there was the story of the man who has been giving him water in that particular way in which the water was being given to him. It's not on the table where you have to run and grab. It was being placed in his path and low enough for him just to grab and not have to really lift his arms that high up to get it. There's that story as well, but a man on a mission, a man with a plan, a man who knows what he's going for. It's Eliud Kipchoge. I am sure we have not seen the last of that record. It is still going to be lowered at some point. For Amos Kipruto, and having been a silver medalist at the Olympics in Tokyo in 2020, I think that progression has been good for him as well, recording a 2:04:39 and winning the London Marathon was a very good progression for him. Now, it's a season of the marathons, but it's also the season of the Kenyans to take what they believe is theirs, including the records. And I think the plan is on to dominate the big world marathons, judging by what we have seen so far and the expectation of what is going to happen in the weekend marathon.
Bernard, as we wind up with the conversation about the marathon and Kipchoge and Amos Kipruto, because before we talk about Kipchoge Jocelyn, who was there in London Marathon as well, do you think, because at the end of the marathon, when he was asked, is it the final marathon? Will we see you next time here in Berlin? And they said his knees have more to offer than anybody can imagine. Is it possible Kipchoge might appear in Berlin next year and probably slash
Why are
or
you
get off.
why are you using words like might appear?
Just maybe. You don't know.
This is a record holder. This is the man who holds the record for Berlin Marathon. First of all, he is an automatic inclusion in the Berlin Marathon next year as the world record holder and as the champion of Berlin Marathon consecutively. So he is going to be there. This narrative that is being peddled about whether he's going to be there next year, is there something that has happened that shows that he cannot be there next year? Has he lost anything in it? For all you know, if the marathons weren't very close, he could still have all the energy to even go for the London Marathon and go for the Chicago and go for everything else. It's just that you cannot run as many marathons so closely. And those who are in the know will tell you very nicely that you do 2 for the year and you forget about it for the year, your season is over. So he will be there. Take it from me. He will be there and he will be running and he'll be the man to beat there and we'll still be watching the clock to see what else he does. As for whether he breaks the 2-hour barrier or not, that's a different conversation because you'll need a lot of pace setting. That has to be scientifically arranged for him to do that. Probably drop it slightly below what he did when I heard you talking about the Ineos Challenge. Drop it slightly below what he did at the Ineos Challenge. If he's going to attempt to do another challenge, you can be sure he's got about 2 other appearances at Berlin Marathon before he can say, look, I'm leaving it for the young people. So he will be there, Jeff. He will be there.
Right. Now let's take a look at this story. Jocelyn Kipchoge, who has been a corporal in the Kenya Defense Forces, Kenya Army, she has now been promoted or fitted to be a sergeant in the Kenya Defense Forces. Listen into this story.
Karibu sana.
Thank you, sir.
Na hongera.
Thank you, sir.
Kufanya kazi mzuri sana.
Asante, sir.
Kwa niaba ya nchi na niaba ya KDF.
Thank you, sir.
Niliangalia ukikimbia vizuri sana.
Thank you, sir.
Na nakumbuka mwaka uliopita pia ulikuwa number 1, sio?
Yes, sir.
Na niliangalia timing zako hata this time haikuwa mbaya sana.
Yes, sir.
This time ulikimbia na 2.18.
Yes, sir.
Lakini last year was 2.17.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, lakini nafikiri msichana utamkamata watu wengine, sio?
Yes, sir.
So really I wish you all the very best.
Thank you, sir.
And once again, on behalf of the Kenya Defense Forces, we are very grateful.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, because having somebody running at that level, that is a top notch, isn't it?
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, and I'm very, very confident that utaendelea kufanya vizuri.
Thank you, sir.
You're still young, so continue doing well, eh? Kwa sababu sasa wewe umefanya kazi mzuri, umekuwa corporal kwa huo muda. Leo sasa tunakufanya uwe sergeant. Si ndio?
Well, the best will be crowned. She's no longer corporal. Now she's Sergeant Jocelyn Kipchoge. Chege.
Yeah.
And what do you make of this? You see, for the first time, we've seen so many CDFs coming and going, but we've never seen a CDF who is close to his people like Kipchoge.
2 things really stand out. One is that there's no less a person than the CDF himself sits down with Kipchoge, has a conversation with her. She's a corporal. Imagine, she's a corporal. She's sitting down with the head of the forces. I think already that is motivation enough. And then 2, she's then fitted with this. And you know, one thing that she said, which I don't know how it is. I've tried to do some research. I couldn't get into it. She said that she thanks the forces for the way they take care of the athletes, especially the physiotherapy matters. I don't know what it is that they do or that the others don't do, but I think that's a beautiful story.
It's a service.
Somebody has been appreciated.
It's a service.
Yes.
Jeff, you know, for me, it makes me very emotional, you know. One is apart from the promotion itself. If you look at most of the Kenyan athletes, and especially for those who are in the disciplined forces, the prisons, the police, and the KDF, most of the time, whenever they perform, at least there is that promotion. You know, I say this, that it makes me emotional because it is the forces, it is the disciplined forces that are appreciating this athlete who has bring us glory. You know, so that instead of her, for example, going through trainings, that they have to go to get the promotion, at least what she has shown in terms of achievement alone, gets that. It inspires also those who are starting and even those who are not in the disciplined forces to join. And I add what Gen just mentioned, that especially when it comes to training. You see, the KDF has a training camp where they will give them food. They have the physiotherapist. They don't have to cook for themselves. If you go to most of the training camps that are there, those ones that are owned by different agents, some of them, the athletes cook them for themselves. They clean for the shoes, the clothes. So at the end of the day, what we have on the KDF is that these athletes are able to be professionals. And just their work becomes training. They sleep. They go for training in the evening. They sleep like that. So at least they are able to conserve their energy. And as he said, to get such kind of recognition, we all understand the disciplined forces. It is difficult for an ordinary, whether constable, corporal, even a sergeant, to be able to sit with CDF. And that one, it means a lot, especially for our athletes. Yeah.
Is it possible we can get this treatment for all athletes, equal treatment, where they have enough facilities to train, where they're not limited to having these facilities? Like Omanyala the other day, he was complaining of athletes paying every other time to go to train. At Kasarani, at Nyayo, they're paying to train there. And yet these are people who are going out there to bring us medal and lift the name of this country so high. He said it's becoming more emotional and more mental to athletes. Is there a way we can have a solution whereby we can give these athletes whatever they want as long as they give us results?
Well, you see, looking at the armed forces and the structure the armed forces are set, or is set for its athletes, what have they done? They have invested. There's the new stadium, the complex that they have come up with, the complex at Langata, which has really all the makings of an international facility. Now, if you are not in the army, if you are not in the forces, you are in the private, then I think then the government, it behooves the government then to come up and support the athletes, because not all athletes will come from the forces. And I think Wilfred here, being a former athlete, can attest to that. That if you don't have that support, then you really are going to, unless private sector comes in to help, but ultimately for me it's government.
It's government.
Yeah.
Actually, I want to pick from where Gen has just left. One, it's not every athlete that is in the forces or in the disciplined forces, that is.
Yeah.
But we have majority of athletes who train on their own. And I like, when Ken say that it is high time that the government comes in. Remember that, we have sports bill. We have the national government, we have the county government, where we have ministries that are supposed to be for sports. And you wonder most of the time, what is exactly are they doing? Now, Ken has brought something very important. And for me, I've had a conversation with so many other corporate CEOs and MDs, people who are ready to and willing to come in. The only problem is, they have no idea how they need to come in and help these athletes. But otherwise, if you look, for example, Eliud Kipchoge, he's sponsored by Isuzu. That is the only Kenyan athlete that we can say a certain corporate, which is Isuzu, has identified himself. But I believe that there is so many corporates out there who wants to come in, who wants to chip in. Because I've always said this, Jeff, it doesn't make any sense for us to come and reward these athletes 750,000 shillings for winning a medal, and yet we never participated at the time that they were training. Remember that what they have spent is more than that. And I think for anyone would be happy that, I invested in this person when they were starting. Not just to come and reward, the results. And it is high time now that we have to look at the sports bill, we have to look at all the sections and see how the Sports Federation can collaborate with the government, both county and national, and see how they can be able to help our sportsmen and women. Because otherwise, we have immense talent in this world. But at the end of the day, most of them, they cannot be able to afford.
So we're doing nothing, literally, in terms of facilities, in terms of ensuring these athletes are given the best facilities or the best treatment for them to give us something out there. We saw a team went to Commonwealth Games. The other team went to the US. They didn't have a physiotherapist. Omanyala went there late, and there were issues all over. There were issues from Tokyo, but nobody was talking about them. But there were issues from the very beginning, even though we've been told nothing happened. But is it's time, I think, we treat our athletes with some dignity and some decorum.
Maybe before Gen comes in, I want to put it this way. If you go to a country like, because let's say I live in Italy. If you look at most of the European countries, for example, many times we hear the Britons are in training camp in 10. The Netherlands, they come here fully funded by the government in terms of training, their physiotherapy for 365 days in a year. Here, we are talking about 1 month, 3 weeks before these athletes go for the national championships. So what I think we should be able to look at as a country is if we really need to invest in the sport, if we really want to make our athletes prosper, and I say this not only to athletics but every other federation, is that a government can have a program that runs throughout a year, just like all the other countries are doing. That way, we will be able to promote sport, and these athletes will have less difficulty in their training.
Thank you, Bungei. Let me now engage my colleague from Ethiopia, Bernard. Bernard, what do you make of this KDF fitting Jocelyn Jepkoskoi from promoting her from the corporal position to sergeant?
Well, first of all, my congratulations to Jocelyn for Jepkoskoi for that placing second. She was the defending champion as well, and she's moved up the ranks. But you must also understand how the military works. She can only be promoted within those ranks that are below the rank of an officer freely like that. But the others would have to be on other merits that are related to the profession itself. So for General Kipchoge to do that is a very good thing. But if she has to move from being a sergeant and probably go up to being a captain and all that, it's going to be on merit, pegged on the job. That's what we need to understand. Secondly, I have a dissenting view from all what you have said about, the government and not providing facilities and all that, because you've all just vented about the government and facilities and you based it back to all that time. What is the prize money for these marathons? It goes in the range of $60,000 US. You can't tell me an athlete like that who's a professional cannot pay for the Nyayo Stadium or for the Kasarani Stadium. I mean, we've got to know when to blame the government and when not to blame the government for anything. These are professional athletes. They are able to pay for what they want, including physios and all that. Now, if you're talking about a national team, an Olympics team, a team bound for all Africa Games, a team bound for, World Athletics Championships, then we can talk about the government providing these people. But you've just vented about these people not having the facilities and all that, which I don't think is true. The army, first of all, the defense force is the single biggest sports institution in the country. Think about it. It's got facilities, it's got personnel, it's got the time, it's got all professionals in there, inclusive of masseurs and physiotherapists. So there is no excuse there about the government. There is nothing to blame the government there about. Now with the new complex that Ken was talking about at Langata, they can train there for all they want. They can train there any other time they want as well. But if you're a professional athlete, I mean, Jeff, you and the other journalists are professional journalists. You go to the stadium and you pay. Well, I don't know if you do. I would go to the stadium and pay because it's such a small fraction.
But Bernard, that doesn't happen in Kenya, and all is
well,
just open.
I do. I don't know about others, but I do because it's such a small fraction to pay when you're going to the stadium. And I'm just thinking, let's not blame the government for what for what we think they're not doing. These athletes are winning the marathons without having to worry about paying for Nyayo Stadium or paying for Kasarani. They are doing what they're doing best, and we should allow them to. I think what we should be thinking about is probably what will happen this weekend in the other marathon as well, and what Kenyans will do there. But on this one, I congratulate the athletes for taking the initiative on their own. There are so many other facilities that they can use to be able to do what they want, and they are doing it. Omanyala is also doing it and breaking records without really worrying about the small matter of paying for
Thank you. He's the one who raised the issue, and we had discussed about it. And we hope that he will understand that what you said could be true, but at the end of the day, there are those who are beginning who doesn't have that money to pay for the stadiums as well. So let's take a short break. When we come back, we have Beldin Adema from Highway Secondary School. They went to the East Africa School Games and they finished in the second, number 2 in the finals. And she will tell us what does it take for her to be female and leading a male team to the finals in the East and Central Africa School Games.